My name is Jack, and I primarily helped out with the hand forging of our hammer design. So we cut our initial blanks of 1045 steel. They were 4 inches long and 1.5 by 1.5 in that area. And then what we did is we put it in the forge, we let it get to forging temperatures. Once we took it out and placed it on the anvil, we used this tool here. This is called a punch. And what we did was we placed it on the center of our workpiece where we wanted the hole. And we hit this top with a hammer and we drove this end in to create our initial hole where the handle would eventually be placed. It wasn't as bent as it is now. Maybe if I straighten a little bit, but it got pretty bent just because of the harsh temperature gradients of this being cold and our workpiece being hot. But we were eventually able to punch a hole out through the material, and that was a lot of work. That probably took us like 3 hours. But it was definitely rewarding when we saw the little plug. So as this is going through the material, it's pushing it out. We'd have to flip the hammer around every so often to get our geometries on both sides decently even, and going back and forth with the material would allow it to essentially move out that little part of the hole that we wanted to get out, and that's called the plug. So it'll actually create like an inverse of this. I think initially this was more V-shaped, but over time it kind of wore down. But once we had it out, it was like a little V-shaped little slug. So that was a fun process. The second step after punching our hole was we needed to then drift our hole. So once all that plug material was out, we still needed to widen it to fit the handle that we were going to put it on. So we used a tool called the drift, and as we can see, it's tapered here, and we would just drive that through our initial hole that we punched and widen out that that section that we did, or that hole. One of the funny things I learned is that it's important what condition your material's in. I got these online. Unbeknownst to me, they came in the as cast condition, and we learned that the hard way. This is not the one we actually used to drift our hole. We used one, we got it decently far, way down close to the desired diameter that we wanted it at, and it eventually fractured on us. But luckily we were able to find a more not so well conditioned drift, but it was already up to here, so we were able to get that more smoothened out, and this one is a little bit stronger than the ones I got online. Afterwards, we then with the hammer we then added like these little sections on the faces. So there would be the handle part, and then it dipped down, and then there'd be the face. We use this jig. This portion here would go in the hardy hole of the anvil, and then we'd take this part, hit with a hammer, and place our hammer billet in the center right here. Not in the center, but yeah, place it here, and then we just work it down and get some rounded grooves. As this is a bit rounded, you'll see.
I'm Daniel Brannigan, and I'm the team lead for Heat, Beat, Repeat. And I mostly focused on the heat treating for our hammer. So for heat treating the hammer, we wanted to make sure that the surface was really hard so that it doesn't deform at all during testing, but we also needed to make sure that it wouldn't crack. So with 1045, because it's got really low alloy content, you're never gonna get a fully martensitic structure with the size of the hammers that we have. So we austenitized at 950, and then we did an oil quench. And after that, we needed to go into a tempering furnace because we get this thin shell of martensite, which is really hard, but it's also kind of brittle. So after we quenched it, we went into the tempering furnace. That was initially at about 250 degrees C for an hour, and that just kind of broke up the martensitic phase, and it's still really hard. We still have really fine-grained material, but now it won't crack. After that, we polished the whole thing off with a flap disc and cleaned it with acetone, and then we put it in a furnace at 300 degrees C for about 30 to 40 minutes, and that got this really nice purple finish on it. And then the last step, after we got that purple oxide on it, we took it off and just hit it with a flap wheel on each of the faces of the hammer, so that way we get a really nice polished surface on the faces.